The CIA and other U.S. intelligence agencies have concluded the Russian government was behind the email hack into the Democratic National Committee and other political organizations, but have yet to produce their evidence publicly.
Russian hackers managed to infiltrate the computer network at the Democratic National Committee.
Well, we do know, first off, that this was a very sophisticated hack. The cybersecurity firm called in to investigate tells CNN the perpetrators are affiliated with the Russian government, and the goal was essentially to gather intelligence.
It was an unprecedented cyber attack ordered by senior Russian leadership on the U.S. election. Hacking the emails of Democratic officials, then released to the public virtually daily by Wikileaks.
The United States formally charged that Russia organized the hacking of Democratic political sites and state election systems. The Department of Homeland Security and the Director of National Intelligence said it is an effort to interfere with the election process.
And I think the third interesting point is that they said the Russian leadership itself had to be behind some of the DNC hacks. It couldn't have just been done at a lower level.
Russian government hackers had broken into the Democratic Party's computer servers, helped themselves to anything they wanted. Those lifted documents and emails stolen from the Democratic Party and ultimately from the chairman of the Clinton campaign, they ended up becoming ammunition in an attack, a foreign attack on the U.S. election, an attack designed to weaken the Democratic candidate, weaken the Democratic Party, disrupt their strategy, disrupt their communications, and ultimately help the Republican candidate, Donald Trump, win the election.
With respect to how this thing unfolded last year, let's just go through the facts pretty quickly. At the beginning of the summer, we're alerted to the possibility that the DNC has been hacked. And once we had clarity and certainty around what in fact had happened, we publicly announced that, in fact, Russia had hacked into the DNC. What I was concerned about in particular was making sure that that wasn't compounded by potential hacking that could hamper vote counting, affect the actual election process itself. And so in early September, when I saw President Putin in China, I felt that the most effective way to ensure that that didn't happen was to talk to him directly and tell him to cut it out, and there were going to be some serious consequences if he didn't. And in fact, we did not see further tampering of the election process, but the leaks through Wikileaks had already occurred. This was an obsession that dominated the news coverage. So I do think it's worth us reflecting how it is that a presidential election of such importance, of such moment, with so many big issues at stake and such a contrast between the candidates, came to be dominated by a bunch of these leaks. What is it about our political system that made us vulnerable to these kinds of potential manipulations, which, as I've said publicly before, were not particularly sophisticated. This was not some elaborate, complicated espionage scheme. They hacked into some Democratic Party emails that contained pretty routine stuff, some of it embarrassing or uncomfortable, because I suspect that if any of us got our emails hacked into, there might be some things that we wouldn't want suddenly appearing on the front page of a newspaper or a telecast, even if there wasn't anything particularly illegal or controversial about it. And then it just took off. And that concerns me, and it should concern all of us. But the truth of the matter is that everybody had the information. It was out there, and we handled it the way we should have.
So now the Nation magazine printed this. Oh, it's driving people crazy. From the Nation magazine, a new report raises big questions about last year's DNC hack. And it's subtitled, "Former NSA Experts Say It Wasn't a Hack at All, but a leak, an inside job by someone with access to the DNC system." Just like Wikileaks said. Wikileaks said they didn't get it from Russia. Wikileaks said that.
You did not get this information about the DNC, John Podesta's emails. Can you tell the American people 1,000% you did not get it from Russia or
Yes.
anybody associated with Russia?
We can say, we have said repeatedly over the last 2 months that our source is not the Russian government and it is not a state party.
So this is from that article. There's a group of people called the VIPs. They're Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. Called VIPs, Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. It was founded in 2003. Now has 30 members, including a few associates with backgrounds in national security fields other than intelligence. Who makes up this group of people who investigated this DNC hack from VIPs? The chief researchers active on the DNC case are 4. William Binney, formerly the NSA's technical director for world geopolitical and military analysis and designer of many agency programs that are now in use. So that's William Binney, former NSA technical director. He's the lead guy. The other guy, Kirk Wiebe, formerly a senior analyst at the NSA's Signet Automation Research Center. So that's 2 people from the NSA, William Binney, Kirk Wiebe. Edward Loomis, he's a formerly technical director in the NSA's Office of Signal Processing. And Ray McGovern, we all know Ray McGovern. He is an intelligence analyst for nearly 3 decades and formerly chief of the CIA's Soviet Foreign Policy Branch. So I bet that guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
We kind of draw the little chronology here, and I'd ask for the patience of all you listening here or watching, because it's a little bit complicated, but I'll try to make it simple. June 12th, 2016, last year, Julian Assange announces, "We have emails related to Hillary Clinton that we are going to publish soon."
Right.
June 12th. June 15th, just, 3 days later, right? CrowdStrike, the DNC contractor, announces that the DNC system has been compromised. Someone has adulterated or inserted malware, is what they said, into the system, and we think it was the Russians. There's evidence that it was the Russians. Okay, that's the 15th of June, 3 days after Julian said, "Whoops, here's
Right.
coming." On the same day, surely by coincidence, this Guccifer 2.0 raises its head and says, "Aha, the DNC, CrowdStrike is right. We did it." Okay,
Right.
we
It
did
was all
it.
me.
Yeah.
Right, I figured it out.
And we're working for WikiLeaks. Okay, right. Oh wow! Now, what happens next? Next, we know that on July 5th, so a couple weeks later, someone, not hacked, but someone copied information from DNC computers or the local area network having to do with their server. And that someone was on the East Coast because the metadata shows that it was Eastern Daylight Time. Mm-hmm. And it was copied at a speed that far exceeds anything that the internet is capable of. What does that mean? For the layman, it means that it's not a hack. Hack is you do it from a remote site,
right,
and you hack in, and the only thing you can do that so quickly, and I can give you the speeds if you like, but they're mind-boggling, is if you have a thumb drive, for example, stick it in the computer, then you can run it at those kinds of speeds. That's important, okay?
So this group that they're working with, the VIPs working with, called Forensicators. Forensicators' first findings, made public in a paper dated July 9th, concerned the volume of supposedly hacked materials and what is called the transfer rate, the time a remote hack would require. So you know how fast you can download something from the internet and how fast you can upload something from the internet, right? So that's what they're talking about. And they said the metadata established several facts in this regard with granular precision. That on the evening of July 5th, 2016, 1,976 megabytes of data were downloaded from the DNC server. This operation took 87 seconds, and the yield transfer rate was 22.7 megabytes per second. What's the problem with that? Well, if it really was hacked externally over the internet and downloaded, according to these guys, the VIP, the NSA, the CIA guys who are telling the truth, they say no internet service provider, such as a hacker would have had to use in the mid-2016s, was capable of downloading data at this speed. So there wasn't even available the technology to download at the transfer rate, which we know it was transferred at for sure. We didn't have internet providers capable of doing it. Also, get this, another thing so that's boom right there. Number two, timestamps in the metadata provided further evidence of what happened on July 5th. The stamps recording the download indicate that it occurred in the Eastern Daylight Time Zone at approximately 6:45 p.m. So they have data that shows you how much data was downloaded, transferred from the DNC server, what time that happened. 6:45 p.m., 1,975 megabytes of data in 87 seconds. That's way faster than they could have done it if they were actually hacking in. So that's why they say it wasn't a hack. It wasn't a hack. It was a leak. This confirms that the person entering the DNC system was working somewhere on the east coast of the United States. In theory, the operation could have been conducted from Bangor, Maine, or Miami, or anywhere in between, but not Russia, not Romania, or anywhere else outside the Eastern Daylight Time Zone. Combined with Forensicators' findings on the transfer rate, the timestamps constitute more evidence that the download was conducted locally.
So that means that particular, now we're talking about a different download or different copy now. We already hope disposed of the one that Julian Assange got. This is very different. Now, why would they do that? Well, the 12th of June, 15th of June, as soon as they learned that Julian Assange had emails related to Hillary Clinton, what are you going to do? Well, as I reconstructed, what we do is we say it's from the Russians. And so CrowdStrike, who's working for the DNC, announces, there's malware, and we think it was the Russians. And then immediately, same day, Gustav said, yeah, we did it, and we're working for Julian Assange. Okay. Now, the idea, of course, this is how we interpret it. The idea was, since Julian Assange was going to come out with emails, and God knows when, maybe he'd do it right before the Democratic National Convention. My God, that would be awful.
Right.
So we'll say that he got it from the Russians, and that way we can divert attention from what's in the emails. Mm-hmm. Because God knows how much he's got there. He might be able to show that we stole the nomination from Bernie Sanders. I mean, it's probably in there, you know.
Right.
So let's do this little preemptive move. Let's, in June here, before he ever gets this stuff out, before Julian doesn't adulterate these things, what he does is sort of array them in searchable form. It's going to take a while, right? Okay, so we have a little time. We've got 6 weeks or so. Or they didn't know how long, but let's do it right away. And so when Julian Assange comes out with this, they're all set to say, aha, it was the Russians hacking. Now, this was a I remember the old movie or book, Magnificent Obsession, right? This was a magnificent diversion, because as soon as Julian Assange outed with the emails related to Hillary Clinton, that was on the 22nd of July,
right,
3 days before the Democratic National Convention began, they were prepared, okay? They were prepared to say, aha, Russia did it, Russia did it. You could see them sort of sitting around a table, here's Hillary. She's, my God, what are we going to do? What will Bernie say? I mean, he's already said he'd acquiesce, but what will we say now? And somebody says, I know what we do. We'll blame the Russians. And I think, Russians? Well, it wasn't the Russians, it was Julian Assange. Well, that's all right. We'll say that Julian Assange was working for the Russians. Well, yeah, but what's the rationale? Oh, come on. The Russians want Trump to win because Trump has said nice things about Putin. Oh, this is going to be easy to prove. Well, anybody got any better ideas? Okay, let's go with that. It worked beautifully. The mainstream media played all this story about why the Russians hacked.
Most of the members have decades of experience in matters concerning Russian intelligence and the related technologies. So these are guys, former CIA, former NSA guys, former intelligence guys in the government, who formed their own committee in 2003. Why do you think that was? Because we were being lied to by the CIA, Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney, George. Our government was lying to us so we would go into Iraq. So that's when they were formed. They have all argued that the hack theory is wrong, and that a locally executed leak is far more likely explanation. Huh? Oh, I bet you Rachel Maddow is going to cover this. I bet you they can't wait to talk about this on Chris Hayes. In a letter to Barack Obama dated January 17th, 3 days before he left office, the group explained that the NSA's known programs are fully capable of capturing all electronic transfer data. So this is what I've been saying. They have every email. They have every text. They have every phone call that every person in Trump's organization and everybody inside the United States. They've got everybody's. And according to them, the NSA is fully capable of capturing all electronic transfers data. So if the transfer data from the DNC server or John Podesta server they transferred to someone else to get that data, they have a record of it. The NSA, that's what they're saying. And then they say, this is in the letter to Barack Obama 3 days before he left office, they said, quote, "We strongly suggest that you ask the NSA for any evidence it may have, indicating that the results of Russian hacking were given to Wikileaks. If NSA cannot produce such evidence, and quickly, this would probably mean it does not have any." That's what they said to Barack Obama 3 days before he left office. The day after Perry published this letter, Obama gave his last press conference as president, at which time he delivered one of the great gems among the official statements on the DNC email question. What was that gem that Barack Obama delivered right before he left office? The last word he had to say when he was president about the, quote, Russian hacking scandal? Here's what he said. "The conclusions of the intelligence community with respect to the Russian hacking were not conclusive." So after they send that letter, they published that letter, Barack Obama is aware of it. He says that. That's Barack Obama. And if you remember from our other story, when Barack Obama met with Vladimir Putin, he was asked if he talked about the Russian hacking scandal. That was in November of 2016. And you know what he said? He said, that's behind us. Almost like Barack Obama knew it was all bullshit. The article goes on, based on the knowledge of former officials such as Binney, the group knew, 1, if there was a hack, and 2, if Russia was responsible for it. The NSA would have to have evidence of both. Binney and others surmised that the agency and associated institutions were, quote, hiding the absence of evidence behind the claim that they had to maintain secrecy to protect NSA programs. So there was no evidence. This is what they're saying. There was no evidence of Russian hacking. And if it actually happened, the NSA would have the evidence. But there wasn't any evidence, and the proof of it was that they were hiding the absence of this evidence by claiming they couldn't tell us what the evidence was because they had to maintain secrecy to protect NSA programs. So you follow that? I do. Hope you do.
So, it's a complicated thing, but it's really pretty simple when you come right down to it. They knew Julian Assange had the goods on him. If anybody looked at the content of these goods, they would see, and this is not exaggeration, they would see that Hillary and Debbie Wasserman Schultz stole the nomination for Bernie Sanders. Why did Debbie Wasserman Schultz and her 4 top people quit on the spot? Oh, did I tell you something? Okay. Right. But with the help of the media, they were able to make this magnificent diversion. And now when we look at the ostensible evidence for this and apply forensics to it, we come up with a conclusion that, hey, this was a leak from somebody inside the DNC. It could not have been the Russians because of the physics and because of the capability of the internet. That's big.
Right. Right. And and it's not just that, this shows it wasn't a hack, this was a leak. It also shows that this was a prophylactic or deliberate leak with the Russian fingerprints being put on it in order to create this narrative.
It was a cut and paste job, for God's sake. They found a available what do they call it, a format or a kind of a
template.
Template, yeah. And so they superimposed the stuff on the template and Cyrillic,
right.
Russian language there. So what I found at the time was of most interest was that people were assuredly just assuring everyone that this had to be a professional job. This had to be, really, really, the GRU, the Russian, they're really good at this. And then, oops, they're left behind some Cyrillic.
Yeah, they're so good, they register their Microsoft Word username as Felix Edmundovich, written in Cyrillic.
Yeah, Felix Edmundovich, of course, was the first chief of the Cheka, the KGB. The Soviet
Joy, what a blunder. How silly, they left that in.
They didn't want anybody to miss that.
Yeah, right, I know. In the Vips memo that you guys put out called Was the Russian Hack an Inside Job? You ended it, you said, we do not know who or what the murky Guccifer 2.0 is. You may wish to ask the FBI.
Yeah.
Why might we want to ask the FBI?
Well, the first question to ask Director or former Director Comey, James Comey, who has this undeserved reputation of being, widely respected. He's the guy that approved torture, approved eavesdropping. Why he's widely respected, well, that's because the New York Times and the Washington Post think don't think, but say he's widely respected. Why did James Comey, after it was revealed that the DNC had been hacked, so to speak, well, normally what would happen in that case, unless I'm sadly mistaken, would be that the FBI would be invited in to take a look, say, who did this, Or the DNC would say, would you please come in here and see who did this? But you know what? Neither seem to be very interested in looking at that. So, with all due respect, and not much is due, really, James Comey is guilty of malfeasance, not just misfeasance. People crying that this is an act of war, and he sits back and he says, no, I don't want to send my technicians in there.
This is how the article concludes, by any balanced reckoning, the official case purporting to assign a systemic hacking effort to Russia, the events of mid-June and July 5th last year being the foundation of this case, is, quote, shabby to the point taxpayers should ask for their money back. Ray McGovern calls it a disgrace to the intelligence profession. It is spotlessly free of evidence, front to back, pertaining to any evidence in which Russia is implicated. James Clapper, the former director of national intelligence, admitted in May that hand-picked analysts from 3 agencies, not the 17 previously reported, drafted the ICA.
As you know, the ICA was a coordinated product from 3 agencies, CIA, NSA, and the FBI, not all 17 components of the intelligence community. Those 3.
The intelligence communities have concluded, all 17 of them, that Russia interfered with this election. And we all know how that's right.
Senator, as I pointed out in my statement, Senator Franken, there were only 3 agencies that directly involved in this assessment, plus my office.
But all 17 signed on to that.
Well, we didn't go through that process. This was a special situation because of the time limits and what I knew to be who could really contribute to this and the sensitivity of the information. We decided it was a conscious judgment to restrict it to those 3.
Hand-picked from 3 agencies. So remember, 17 agencies have all concluded with high confidence. And let's remember, when the intelligence agency says we have high confidence, that means they don't have any evidence. It actually is backwards of how you should do it. Behind the ICA lie other indefensible realities. The FBI has never examined the DNC computer servers, and a mission that is beyond preposterous.
When did the DNC provide access to the FBI for your technical folks to review what happened?
Well, we never got direct access to the machines themselves. The DNC in the spring of 2016 hired a firm that ultimately shared with us their forensics from their review of the system.
Director Rogers, did the NSA ever get access to the DNC hardware?
The NSA didn't ask for access. That's not in our job jar. That would
Good copy. So, Director, FBI notified the DNC early, before any information was put on WikiLeaks, and when you have still never been given access to any of the technical or the physical machines that were hacked by the Russians.
That's correct, although we got the forensics from the pros that they hired, which, again, best practice is always to get access to the machines themselves, but this, my folks tell me, was an appropriate substitute.
I recall very clearly that I was not pleased that we were not in there helping them patch this vulnerability. DHS does not have the power to issue a search warrant or get a search warrant and go in and patch their vulnerabilities over their objections.
So what struck you most about your conversation with Jay Johnson today?
A couple of things. He's in a unique position to answer one of those 4 tranches. Martha, again, remember, we're looking at what did Russia do, with whom, if anyone, did they do it? What was the government's response in 2016? And he was the secretary of DHS at all relevant times. So I was really interested in what the Obama administration knew and when, and what efforts they took to thwart the Russians or to notify potential victims. You just played a clip where we had a victim, the DNC. And not only did they not cooperate with Jay Johnson, they didn't turn the server over to the FBI. So I think it's a little ironic to now criticize, as some Democrats are, Jay Johnson and Jim Comey and others for not doing enough in 2016 when you had a really good piece of evidence you didn't bother to turn over.
Why would they say no? Why would they not want to cooperate with that investigation?
Oh, well, let me hazard a wild guess that there may be something else on that server they didn't want law enforcement to see. I mean, that's where you start. I don't like speculating, but I have dealt in the past with victims who would not cooperate with investigations. And typically the reason is there's something else you don't want law enforcement to see. There is no reason to not allow DHS to patch or fix a vulnerability in the DNC system. And heavens knows there's no reason to not give the world's premier law enforcement agency, which is the FBI, the evidence they may need to stop another attack from hurting someone else.
So the DNC responded to this article. So here's their response. You ready? U.S. intelligence agencies have concluded the Russian... Oh, they don't say 17 anymore. Isn't that nice? They don't say 17 anymore. So they stopped lying that way. U.S. intelligence agencies have concluded, without evidence, the Russian government hacked the DNC in an attempt to interfere in the election. Any suggestion otherwise is false and is just another conspiracy theory like those pushed by Trump and his administration. The irony there is unbelievable. The conspiracy here being pushed is the one by the DNC and the mainstream media. Isn't that what's called a conspiracy theory? Because you don't have any evidence. So what this is called is debunking your conspiracy theory. But that's all the DNC knows how to do. That's all these corporate hacks know how to do, is smear someone who's telling the truth. That's what they do. That's what the establishment does. They smear whoever's telling the truth. From the Washington Post will smear you. The New York Times will smear you. MSNBC will smear you. The DNC will smear you. CNN will smear you. Anybody who tells the truth about this case immediately smeared, along with The Nation magazine. Isn't that interesting? And they conclude, this is the DNC conclude, it's unfortunate that The Nation has decided to join the conspiracy theorists to push this narrative. So that's, that's right there. That's the old Karl Rove trick of you accuse the person. That's Machiavelli. You accuse the people of doing what you're actually doing. So that's what that is. The DNC is pushing a conspiracy theory about Russia hacking into their servers and throwing the election. Although they say those emails were banal. That's what the Washington Post will tell you. Those emails were banal, but somehow they threw the election, and we should start World War III. You see the problems? And do you see when an actual investigation takes place, what actually is revealed? The actual evidence proves it's bullshit. The WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, I saw with my own eyes, intimate on an interview that the person who did that download, or he intimated, didn't say, he intimated that their source could have been Seth Rich. Now, my question...
a lot of people say that.
Donald Trump has had a disastrous few weeks. If you look at the polls, he needs a miracle. In the American political lexicon, there's such a thing as the October surprise. The stuff that you're sitting on, is an October surprise in there? Do you even know what you're sitting on?
WikiLeaks never sits on material. Whistleblowers go to significant efforts to get us material, and often very significant risks. As a 27-year-old works for the DNC, who was shot in the back, murdered just 2 weeks ago for unknown reasons as he was walking down the street in Washington. So
that was just a robbery, I believe, wasn't it?
No, there's no finding. So
what are you suggesting? What are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that our sources take risks, and they become concerned to see things occurring like that.
But was he one of your sources then? I mean,
we don't comment on who our sources are.
But why make the suggestion about a young guy being shot in the streets of Washington?
Because we have to understand how high the stakes are in the United States, and that our sources are, our sources face serious risks. That's why they come to us, so we can protect their anonymity.
But it's quite something to suggest a murder. That's basically what you're doing.
Well, others have suggested that. We are investigating to understand what happened in that situation with Seth Rich. I think it is a concerning situation. There's not a conclusion yet. We wouldn't be willing to state a conclusion, but we are concerned about it. And more importantly, a variety of WikiLeaks sources are concerned when that kind of thing happens.
In this company, if you give me $1 million, I can guarantee you will make an extra $1 million.
I just like to walk in. I wouldn't need a special costume. Just dress like this. And I'd fly in. Bullshit.
Bullshit.
Bullshit. Bullshit. Bullshit.